Hi, Greyhounds. Here we are with the third and probably final conclusion. I think I can get through it. The conclusion to The Dog Who Lost His Bark. And I can't wait to find out. I realize I've read it before to myself, but oh my goodness, when we stopped off last time, he had gotten through to Oz. Oz has not ventured outside, but at least he'll come out of his crate. He's doing his business in the shoe, so that's not any good. But remember that music was the key. Music is really important. So that's the key to getting him to come to key, and trust is really important too. And so finally he came out of his crate. All righty. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in here with chapter 6. And that would be page 71. After the initial breakthrough, things moved pretty quickly on the Oz front. Over the next few days, Patrick played the violin more than he had in a long time. He played jigs and reels. He played classical concertos and popular music. He played movie theme tunes and advertising jingles. In fact, he played everything he had learned in 5 years of lessons, and Oz howled or whined the notes back to him, with the exception of country and western, which he didn't seem to care for. But progress stopped dead at a certain point. Oz still would not leave the room. He howled any tune that Patrick would play and even composed a few of his own, which Granddad had to admit were pretty good. Oz would accept food from Patrick, and he even allowed himself to be groomed, so long as Granddad played the cello downstairs while Patrick scrubbed him. And soon he was looking like a brand new dog. His potty training was going well, that's good, insofar as Oz was happy to do his business on a newspaper laid out in the corner of the bedroom, so Patrick was not forced to sacrifice his shoes anymore. The violin case had become Oz's permanent bed, and he had begun to make a collection of Patrick's old action figures in the lid. He used them as chew toys. And that's nice of Patrick to let him chew on those action figures. And there is an illustration of the action figures. Sweet. But no matter how hard Patrick tried to tempt him downstairs, Oz would stick no more than his nose outside the bedroom door. It seemed as though he was prepared to trust Patrick only so far and no farther. Eventually, Patrick decided to give Zane a call. He explained the problem. "I'm amazed you've got him out of the crate so quickly," said Zane. "But Oz is afraid to go outside because he still has no bark, Buddy boy. He's howling, but he isn't barking. You need to reach inside him and pull out his bark. Not literally, of course, because your arm would get all slimy and Oz might bite your fingers off. All I'm saying is teach your dog to bark, because when a dog barks at something, that dog isn't so afraid of that thing anymore." Zane made it sound easy. Teach your dog to bark. But how? Patrick sat beside Oz with his violin across his knees and said firmly, "Come on, boy, bark!" But Oz just blinked and howled the opening bars of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Patrick checked the index of making the top dog, but there were no references to teaching a dog to bark. He called his friend Eric back at home, who had a schnauzer also named Eric, which could be confusing. And Eric said, "I can't get my dog to stop barking. Do you want to trade dogs?" Patrick answered that he did not. Mom suggested that Patrick demonstrate for Oz how easy barking was, so Patrick knelt in front of Oz one afternoon, feeling more than a little silly. "Woof," he said. "Woof, woof, arf, arf." Oz looked at Patrick as though he might be a bit nuts, and Patrick thought maybe Oz was right. "Give Oz a fright," said Granddad, "like you do when someone has hiccups." But Patrick, I don't know that I've shown you that picture, so there's an illustration of Patrick trying to teach Oz how to bark. But Patrick thought maybe Oz had already experienced enough frights in his life. Patrick looked at doggy videos on YouTube and noticed that most dogs barked their heads off when there was a cat in the vicinity. "A cat," he thought. "I can pretend to be a cat." So one morning after a violin howling session, he sat in front of Oz and raised his hands like a cat's paws. "Meow," he said. "Meow." Oz lifted his head and licked Patrick's fingers. Hey, said Patrick, laughing and pulling away his fingers. A lick was nice, but it wasn't a bark. It was frustrating. Patrick spent every spare minute with Oz, but still he couldn't get through. Oz seemed perfectly content to spend his time howling in Patrick's room. Do you understand, boy? Patrick asked him. We have to leave this room soon and go home. But of course, Oz didn't understand. He was a dog. By the way, there's an illustration of Patrick with his cat mask on. Mom had been busy teaching and thinking about Coin family life in general, but not too busy to notice that Patrick was missing his dad and their usual summer antics. And now his new dog was keeping them both cooped up inside. If Patrick's father were here, she thought, the two of them would be outside playing right now. And that thought led to another thought, which led to an idea. Patrick was trying his latest make Oz bark scheme when Mom knocked on his bedroom door. You're wearing a cat mask, she said as she entered the room. I made it myself, said Patrick. I covered a balloon with paper mache. Very realistic, said Mom. Patrick took the mask off. Oz doesn't seem to think so. Still no bark? No bark, said Patrick glumly, and we're no closer to going outside. Summer's halfway over and we haven't so much as played fetch. Mom crossed the room to the window and drew back the curtain. Well, maybe I can help you two guys out. I doubt it, said Patrick. The entire internet couldn't help us out. Sometimes, said Mom, mothers are wiser than the internet, and she opened the window just a crack. Mom, said Patrick, what are you up to? Mom narrowed her eyes and waved her arms. Magic, my doubting son, she said. Magic. For a moment the magic had no effect on her doubting son or his dog. Then Oz lifted his nose and sniffed. Arf, said the dog. Patrick was stunned. Did you bark, boy? Was that a bark? Arf, arf, barked Oz. There could be no doubt. Oz had his bark back. Patrick could hardly believe it. He had a barking dog in his hands. You did it, pal. You barked. You're a fully fledged barking dog. Oh, I love it. You see, said Mom, the wisdom of mothers must never be doubted. What did you do? Asked Patrick. I tried everything. There's a picture of him at the window. Oh, he's barking at something outside. I said, Mom tapped her head. I used the old noodle, Patrick. I said to myself, something is making that dog sad, just like something is making Patrick sad. I'm sad that Dad's so far away, said Patrick. Bingo, said Mom. Before Patrick could figure this out, Oz had darted past him and was looking out the window, barking for all he was worth. With each bark, he kicked up his back legs and wagged his tail as if it were operated by a motor. Patrick ran to the window and looked outside. Zane stood on the sidewalk with the dog on a leash. The dog looked like an older version of Oz. Aww, remember his mom? Maybe it's his mom. How awesome. Is that? Mom nodded. That's Oz's mother. Zane knew where to find her. Mom, said Patrick, you're unbelievable, a genius. Mom curtsied. Thank you, my son. You are absolutely right, of course. Oz was so excited he could hardly contain himself. He pranced around the room, lifting his paws high and barking like he was getting paid for it. Woohoo! Shouted Patrick, who felt like barking himself. Go, Oz! But there were still hurdles to overcome before they could actually go out. A collar, for example. Whenever Patrick had tried to put a collar on Oz, the dog had retreated to his crate and stayed there for an hour. This time, Patrick put the collar on the floor in front of Oz's bed. The dog shrank away from it. All righty. Woo! Things are looking up. So, but they were still hurdles to overcome before they could actually go out. I'm repeating that last paragraph. I had to stop because the kindergartners were so loud. So back to our story. But there were still hurdles to overcome before they could actually go out. A collar, for example. Whenever Patrick had tried to put a collar on Oz, the dog had retreated to his crate and stayed there for an hour. This time, Patrick put the collar on the floor in front of Oz's bed. The dog shrank away from it. So there's the collar. Doesn't like the collar. Mom opened the window so Oz could smell his mother's scent. Arf, 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 said Oz to the collar, and whatever horrible memories he had stored in his doggy brain seemed to evaporate, and the collar became simply a collar. Patrick fastened the collar and clipped on a leash. Then Oz trotted behind Patrick as far as the stairway, where he pulled up short and whined the opening bars of Chopin's Funeral March. This was not a good sign. Come on, Oz, said Patrick, starting down the stairs. Come on, little fellow, one step at a time. Arf, said Oz, and he took the first step. It took a few more steps for him to become accustomed to stairs, but very soon dog and boy were on the ground floor, and the dog wasn't finished yet. He needed to get outside and see his mother. He strained at the leash, pulling toward the front door. It seemed that Oz was ready to venture outside. Patrick opened the front door, and Oz stuck his nose into the sunshine, sniffed it, found it satisfactory, and dragged Patrick out onto the cracked city sidewalk, where his mother greeted him with licks and nuzzles. And there he is scampering down the stairs so he can get to her. Aw, I love a family reunion, said Zane. Your mom's a smart one. I should have thought of this myself. Oz is outside, said Patrick. I can't believe it. Zane scratched Oz's head, and he can visit any time. I found her at home with Mrs. Davidson at the end of the street. She just lost her old corgi. Oz's mother is perfect for her. I believe she's naming her Victoria. Patrick knelt and joined in the wriggling cuddle between Oz and his mother. I can't believe it, he said again. I just can't believe it. You did it, Oz. Zane reached into his pocket and pulled out a tennis ball. Hey, it's early yet. What do you say we walk on over to the park and play a little fetch? Patrick thought his head would explode. Fetch? That would be amazing. He turned to Mom and Granddad, who were standing at the door along with the students and teachers who had come out to see what all the commotion was about. Can I? Can I go? Are you kidding, buddy? Said Granddad. We're coming with you. So all of them went to the park, Patrick, Mom, Granddad, Zane, Oz, Victoria, 3 music teachers, and 11 music students. And look at that. I love that joyful scene. Wow, Patrick's outside and he's with his mom and he's loving life, and the kids in the music classes get to go too. Awesome. Now we have chapter 7, but the book's far from over. So here we go. It was the best summer of Patrick's life, a summer that would have been absolutely perfect if Patrick's dad had been around to be a part of it. Patrick texted his dad every day and sent dozens of photos of Oz, visiting his own mother and getting up to various doggy antics, such as chasing his tail in the park or lying on his back in the sun, with all paws raised and a look of utter bliss on his face. Dad always replied, but would never offer any details on when he would be home to meet Oz in person, or indeed how he would manage that without sneezing his head off. Mom was usually teaching, but she had Wednesdays and Sundays off, so she dedicated those days to family outings. They made excursions to the beach, which Oz totally flipped over, spending hours tugging at sheaves of seaweed. They climbed to the top of a nearby hill, which tired them all out. And they attended doggy parties where Oz got to hang out with some of the other dogs in the neighborhood, including Victoria. They had Oz thoroughly checked out by the local vet. All his vaccinations were brought up to date. That's good. His claws were clipped, his ears de-waxed, and his coat trimmed. All in all, by the middle of August, Oz had transformed from a traumatized, abandoned pup to a healthy, much-loved one. And so there's a picture of them climbing rocks at the beach. Wow. Oz is living his best life, don't you think? Whew, he certainly deserves a great life. Of course, I think all dogs deserve a great life, don't you? And while Patrick was absorbed by his pal's transformation, he couldn't help noticing that sometimes when he looked at Mom and she wasn't expecting it, her face was sad. Mom covered it well, but Patrick didn't have to be a genius to realize the source of her sadness. Dad. Chapter 8. One afternoon, Patrick tracked Mom to the garden hammock with the help of Oz's nose. Mom, I've been texting Dad for weeks now, and he still won't say when he's coming home. What's going on? Mom sat up. It's question time, is it? I'm surprised I escaped for this long. I have a whole lot of questions. Why are you sad, for one? And what's going to happen when we go home? I know you don't expect me to leave Oz with Granddad. Oz heard his name and barked. Mom swung her legs out of the hammock. Of course I don't. You don't have to. But Dad's allergies will go into overdrive. His eyes will swell shut. He loves the photos I send, but he and Oz won't be able to live in the same house as each other. Mom wiped her eyes. No, they won't, she agreed. Patrick was suddenly very afraid of where these questions were leading him, but he couldn't stop asking. Why are you crying? Is Dad sick? Is he dying? No one's dying, Patrick, said Mom. Calm down. Something's going on. You bought me off with Oz before. Ruff, ruff. Mom blew her nose and took a deep breath, taking her time before answering. We're not going home, Pat, she said at last. This is our home now. Patrick's eyes widened and his mouth fell open. This is our home? Here? Granddad's? This is our home, Mom repeated, because your dad and I are splitting up. He found someone new for himself in Sydney last year, and she's coming back with him. I don't want to be in the same town, so here we are. Patrick couldn't believe it. Dad was leaving them? But Dad was Dad, his dad. Patrick had heard of other parents separating or getting divorced, but his parents? And here's a picture of his mom with tears in her eyes. There, and Patrick, tears in his eyes. I talk to Dad every day, and he's never said anything about someone new, said Patrick. No, said Mom, he didn't, and he should have. I've told him 100 times it's not fair to keep you in the dark like this. But you and Dad love each other. He doesn't love me anymore, said Mom, but he loves you. Patrick could not take in the information. He had so many questions that they clogged up his throat like a blocked drain. But, he said, where are we supposed to? Then he finally got a full one out. Do you think it's for good? Mom nodded silently and Patrick simply froze, like a computer processing too many commands. He stayed like that for a long time, then finally turned and walked back inside the house. Oz whined and licked Mom's hand. Hey, boy, said Mom, don't worry. Patrick will be all right. Why don't I take you for a walk today? Oh, there's a picture of his mom crying. There's Oz barking at Patrick, and Patrick is walking away. Heartbreaking. And here is an illustration of Patrick on his bed. Patrick lay on his bed and thought about his father. Patrick had always liked his dad, a little different from other dads. He played the fiddle in a band for one thing, and he had never been big on saying normal things like, make sure you get that toothbrush right in there at those back teeth, or I know geography is confusing, especially with all those tiny countries in Europe. Instead, it seemed to Patrick that most of the things his father said to him were important, like, remember, son, there are things in the world that no one understands. Or, in the end, in almost every situation, it boils down to quick thinking. Or Patrick's favorite, most people you meet will be so stupid that they think they're smart, but a few will be smart enough to know they're stupid, and those are the clever ones. Which made sense if you thought about it, and was also a joke and a tongue twister. And now Dad was not coming back. Had he found a new son, a better one, who practiced his violin every day? Patrick sent his dad a text. Have you found a better son? Is that it? Then, without even waiting for a reply, he switched his phone off and threw it on the floor. He felt tricked by everyone. Dad had tricked him. Granddad had played along. Even Mom had distracted him with a dog. Then Patrick realized something. Even if Dad changed his mind and wanted to stay with Mom, he couldn't as long as Oz was part of the package. Patrick buried his face in his pillow and thought about this until his head hurt. Oh no. If he thinks he has to give up Oz, he's surely wrong about that. So I think he thinks that if he gets rid of Oz, maybe he can get his dad back, and that's not reasonable thinking. Granddad couldn't look after a dog. He didn't have 5 spare minutes in the week. Whichever way Patrick looked at it, it was up to him to make this okay again. Yes, Dad had left him, but it didn't have to stay like that. Situations could change, and one thing was for sure, he wanted more than anything to have things back the way they were. Then he made the toughest decision of his life. The idea made him sick to his stomach, but Patrick realized that Oz had to go. His best friend had to go back to the shelter. No, no, no. I hate this part of the book so much. I think Patrick's all messed up. Giving Oz back to the shelter? Ooh, send him back there? That's going to be the worst decision ever, don't you think? And it's going to break Oz's heart. He's already had his heart broken, destroyed, and somehow by trust and love, he gave a boy a chance. And now Patrick's just going to stomp on it. Oh, I hate it. Chapter 9. Oz knew that his new name was Oz because his buddy Patrick said it 100 times a day. So now we've switched to Oz's point of view. Whenever Patrick said his name now, Oz barked it right back at him. Oz, Oz. It sounded a lot like regular barking, but Oz was pretty sure Patrick could tell the difference because Patrick was his best friend. Also, Oz could also say Patrick, which sounded a lot like regular barking too, but Patrick knew. Oz was certain of it. Oz was happier than he had been since he was taken away from his mother, and to Oz, happiness made the whole world actually brighter. The red velvet that lined his bed seemed to glow, and his food bowl glinted silver in the light from the kitchen window. Oz's bark was stronger than it had ever been since the bad time, and there was nothing Oz liked better than to show off his bark. The first thing he did every day was to hop out of his special bed and control the house, barking sharply in each room to warn any bad things that this house was under the protection of Oz, the true dog. And once this duty was completed and the home was safe, Oz would pick up his paws and trot across the kitchen tiles, which he did not fear anymore, even though they were red and white. And there he would find his buddy, the great Patrick, kneeling over Oz's food bowl, saying his name over and over. And each time the great Patrick said it, Oz would bark the name right back at him. But this morning, Patrick was not in the kitchen. Oz's bowl was there with food in it, but it was not the right shape of food. Patrick always poured the food in the shape of a little mountain with a peak in the middle. The food was smooth, often flat. Wrong, thought Oz, and did not eat the food. The true and faithful Oz went in search of his buddy Patrick and found him sitting in a chair in front of the picture box. He did not react to Oz's hello bark, but he did react when Oz placed his head under Patrick's dangling hand for a morning pat. His reaction was to get up and walk away without patting his buddy Oz. So, no greeting and no pat. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Oz tried to follow Patrick, but Patrick pointed to the floor and made the sound stay, which Oz knew meant no moving, so he did not move. Patrick climbed the stairs to his room and shut the door tight. And there's an illustration of him going up to the top and leaving Oz down there looking up at him. Oh, I can't take it. It's so heartbreaking. Oz was a little worried, but not too much. Patrick was great and awesome and would be just fine. Awesome Patrick's mom gave him a hug or maybe a drink of water. But Patrick was not just fine that day. And in fact, for many days afterward, it seemed as though Patrick had lost that special Patrickness that made him great and awesome. No matter how hard Oz barked or pranced, Patrick did not want to play. And often the other good people would take Oz away from awesome Patrick, as if his buddy did not want to see his friend. And Oz would bark, Patrick, Patrick, Oz, to remind Patrick they were the best of friends. Then a terrible thing happened, and the mom took Oz in the car back to the many dogs place, which Oz remembered from the in-between times, in between bad and good, where the person Zane was the boss. Zane was good, but not good, and Oz spent the days away from Patrick, sitting quietly in his pen, remembering what it had been like when things were bad. He would not play with the other dogs in his pen, but kept his mind on Patrick, wondering if he would ever see his friend again. Oh, I can't take it. And I have to tell you that I cried. Maybe here I cried. Oh my goodness. Oz was very afraid in his pen. He was afraid there'd be no awesome Patrick, awesome seaweed, and no more climbing green hills, and no more wonderful sound from Patrick's music stick, and no more seeing his mother. He was so afraid he did not eat the food Zane left for him. Oz remembered how, after the bad times, Patrick had come into his life and made him bark when he didn't want to, in case the bad people hurt him. But now, because of Patrick, he knew people could be awesome. Patrick had made him bark, and now he would make awesome Patrick bark. He had to. Chapter 10. The only reason Mom had cooperated with Patrick's decision to send Oz back to the rescue shelter was that she thought the puppy's absence would make her son come to his senses. But after a week, he was as stubborn as ever, so she decided that enough was enough. Zane was at the desk when she arrived at the shelter to pick Oz up. Yay! Oh, I don't think she ever should have taken him back, personally. I thought Patrick would crack, said Mom, but he's got it into his head that his dad won't come back as long as Oz is around. He's hoping against hope, poor little man, said Zane. Should I load Oz up? Please, said Mom. Patrick and that dog were meant to be together. Zane went out back and moments later returned with Oz on his leash. Look at that cute face, he said. If anyone can bring Patrick back, it's this little guy. I hope so, said Mom. You can do it, can't you, boy? Ruff, said Oz. Ruff, ruff, ruff. And there's his illustration. Oz had waited with his nose pressed between the bars of his pen for Patrick to come home. When the other dogs were yipping or eating or playing with their toys, Oz had stayed at his post, waiting for awesome Patrick. Patrick, he had thought, Patrick, over and over the same thought so that he could keep it in his head. The sun had gone up and down in the window 7 times, and then the door had opened, and finally Oz smelled his friend. Patrick, he barked, Patrick! But it was not awesome Patrick. It was his mom, who had Patrick's scent on her clothes because of all the hugs they shared. Oz whined a little, but at least Patrick's mom was here, or maybe she would take Oz to Patrick, which would be awesome. The good people talked for a while, and then Zane let Oz out of the pen and led him to the travel crate. Oz knew this meant he was going in the noisy machine, and he jumped into the crate without hesitation because the noisy machine must be going to Patrick's house. And there's Patrick back at home. There's one person or animal who can cheer Patrick up, don't you think? But how? I can't wait. Patrick was looking at the TV, but not really watching. He missed his dad, and now he missed Oz too. But he had to stay strong. It was Oz or Dad. Those were the options. That's stupid, said a voice in his head, and you know it. Maybe it was stupid, but sometimes stupid things were true. Like, for instance, his dad finding another family when he had one that loved him right here. He turned on his phone and sent a quick text to his father. Sometimes stupid things are true. And then he turned his phone off without glancing at the dozens of unread messages. If Dad wanted to talk, he'd have to do it face to face. Oz played it nice and quiet going in the front door, but once he caught a sniff of his buddy's scent, he was off like a bullet, racing across the hallway, his nails clicking on the tiles. Oz, come here, boy, called Mom, but it was too late. Patrick, Oz barked. Patrick, Oz! Patrick didn't react, as Oz had hoped. Oz had been hoping for happy sounds like Oz, buddy, or come here, pal, come here, pal. That was one of his favorites because there was often wrestling after that. Oz thought that wrestling with Patrick was the most awesome thing in the world, but there was no wrestling. Patrick jumped a little when Oz barked, but instead of showing all his teeth and a big smile, he hid his face behind his hands. Oz kept barking and out of the tail chase, spinning around and around till he felt dizzy and toppled over. Always a crowd pleaser, but still, Patrick ignored him. There's an illustration on the next page. Look at Oz. There's Fireland. Let me point that out. Patrick! Barked Oz. Patrick! Oz ran between Patrick's legs and nuzzled his tummy, and while he was there, he smelled something. A familiar smell from his days at the bad place. It was the smell of sadness, and Oz knew this because he used to smell like this himself until Awesome Patrick snapped him out of it. Awesome Patrick had made him lose the sad scent. Oz yelped because he'd had the doggy version of a brainstorm. He pulled away from his buddy and ran upstairs. Oz, Mom called, you come down here. We've had enough drama and there are lessons going on. Oz paid no attention, though he felt bad for ignoring Awesome Patrick's mother. He jumped on the bed and made an awesome bounce onto the shelves where he found what he needed. The one thing that could bring Patrick back to him. The same thing that had brought him to Awesome Patrick. What do you think it is? The violin! Oz took the instrument in his jaws, scrambled downstairs, and dropped the violin at Patrick's feet. The strings vibrated, sending a hum through the air. "Oh my," said Mom. Patrick looked up. Oz lifted his forepaw and tugged at the violin strings, and Mom realized what this amazing, incredible dog was trying to do. "That's it," she said. "Good boy." Oz twanged the strings again and again, sending up a flurry of notes that did not quite match one another, but were music all the same. Then he barked. Patrick blinked. "It's no use, Oz," he said crossly. "There's nothing I can do. I have no choice." The dog played on, twanging with both paws, his tail wagging at the sound of Patrick's voice. "Oz, stop!" begged Patrick. "Mom, please, take Oz away." But Mom was on the pup's side. "Your bark," she said excitedly. "Oz is bringing back your bark. Good boy, Oz. Smart boy." "He is smart," said Patrick. "I know, but how can we ever go home if I have a dog? It wouldn't be fair to Dad." And this tipped Mom over into epic meltdown mode. Mom hadn't had an epic meltdown since she backed the car into a post outside Costco that time when she was late for Pilates. She had never had an epic meltdown at Patrick as far as he could remember. She had never had an epic meltdown as far back as Patrick could remember. But now she was stamping her feet and waving her hands in the air. "Fair to Dad," she said. "Fair to Dad." "Dad has allergies," said Patrick quickly, sensing that this was the wrong thing to say. "Allergies?" said Mom. "Allergies? Is it?" "He's allergic to commitment. He's allergic to straight talking with his son." "Oh, he has allergies, all right." Oz barked. This was exciting. "Mom," said Patrick, "Dad will come back." Mom laughed. "Oh, he'll come back. Of course he will. For 10 minutes or maybe an hour, and then he'll swan off to his new girlfriend. Heaven forbid he might sneeze while he's here, right, Patrick? That would be awful." She's being sarcastic, isn't she? Patrick was a little shocked to hear Mom talk about Dad in this way. There was a moment's silence. Then he said in a small voice, "Mom, do you hate Dad now?" "No, sweetie," said Mom, "I don't hate your father. I'm just very angry with him right now. And he loves you as much as he ever did. But you need to understand, Patrick, that things are different now." Mom sat on the arm of the couch and hugged Patrick. "We have a tough year ahead of us, Pat, getting used to this new life. You'll have to go to a new school and make new friends. Granddad has to get used to us living here. I have to go back to work full time. We need all the friends we can get. You have a friend, Patrick. You have the best friend a boy could ever have, and he loves you even when it looks like you don't love him anymore." All of a sudden, Mom began to cry. The tears gushed out of her in waves, and her entire body shook. She collapsed onto Patrick's shoulder, and he patted her awkwardly on the back. Oz was a smart dog and knew an opportunity when he saw one. And look, she's crying and hugging Patrick, and look at Oz looking at them. What's he gonna do? He clambered onto the couch, wriggling his furry body between Patrick and his mom. He licked Patrick's face, and Patrick knew that he had been stupid to send his dog away. "I'm sorry, boy," he said. "Pals forever, okay? Can you forgive me?" Mom wailed. "Of course he'll forgive you, Dopey. He's a dog." They cried together for a few minutes, and Oz howled the James Bond theme, which was one of his favorites. Granddad stuck his head in the door. "What's going on here?" he asked. "The end of the world? Some of us are trying to work, you know." Mom had just downgraded from a bawl to a sniffle, but seeing her father set her off again. "I can spare 5 seconds for a hug," said Granddad. "I have a student in the next room." As it turned out, Granddad stayed in the hug for almost 3 full minutes before climbing off the couch. "We're keeping Oz then, I take it," he said. "If that's okay," said Patrick, looking down at his feet. "Of course it's okay. Everyone loves Oz. I think students have started to sign up just to hear the amazing singing dog. But what about when your dad comes to visit? Patrick thought about this. Maybe Mom would take Oz for a walk while he's there. Or, said Mom, your dad could take an antihistamine. Imagine that. He'd have to take a tiny pill every single time. The horror. Then she said, sorry, that's a new personality trait I'm developing. Sarcasm. I'm sorry, Patrick. Patrick! Barked Oz. Patrick! You know, Mom, said Patrick, I think that when Oz barks, he's trying to say Patrick. You know, Patrick. Patrick, said Oz. Oh, and look at him. He looks so happy. They both look so happy. Finally. And look at this big hug. Oh, they're both back where they belong, aren't they? Mom hugged the boy and his dog tightly. I think Oz is a very clever dog. Both of the humans were correct. Now, said Mom, we need to start sorting things out. Do you think you're ready to talk to your father? I know you haven't been replying to his texts. We need to talk, not text, said Patrick firmly. Patrick's phone was on the coffee table. Mom picked it up and passed it over. You need to tell your father that, sweetie, she said. Patrick took the phone and scrolled to Dad's number. Patrick, said Oz. Patrick, Patrick. And while he waited for his dad to answer, Patrick wrapped his free arm around his best friend's neck. Oz felt Patrick's fingers in his fur, and he knew that everything was awesome again. There would be good people and green hills and wonderful food. He would howl along with Patrick's music stick. He would go and see Mother, and she would tell him stories. And in the evening, he would sleep in his red velvet bed. Oz was a clever dog, and he knew that sometimes bad things would happen, but bad things were no match for good dog Oz and awesome Patrick. They would be together forever. My boy, thought Oz. Awesome Patrick will always be my boy. Oh, I love that it ended as it should. I want to show you the back cover. There's Oz in his case. And they can be together and happy, and they worked it out. And I love how music and love saved Oz, and then Oz saved Patrick right back, didn't he, with music and love. I can't wait to hear what you thought. Please email me. I want to know if you liked the book and what you liked about it, what you thought about the ending. Also, you can tell me what you're reading these days. Thanks, Greyhounds, for listening, and have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.